Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I'm Peter, that is Tim, and we talk about horror movies here. And on this episode, we are going to talk about The Void, which is a new horror film. It's one of these, with a lot of these smaller movies, it did the festivals last year, but it's only just now being released to the public. So we're going to talk about that. We'll start spoiler free, like we always do, and we'll give you warning before we go into spoilers about halfway through. So, what is The Void? The Void is a movie that is set almost entirely in a hospital with a small group of characters who are trapped there. It's kind of a cult. When I say cult, I don't mean it's a cult movie. Like, you know, you would say Planet 9 from Outer Space is a cult movie. No. The plot has like cult-like figures. It has monsters. It has practical effects. It has things coming from beyond. And that's kind of it. But it's a bottle movie mostly set in this hospital, and that's kind of the gist of it. And these characters get trapped there. There's these cult-like figures who are keeping them there, and violent things start to happen, and there's mystery abound, and all that kind of thing. So before we do anything else, I always start. I always. The first words that always come out of Tim's mouth, unless he rudely interrupts, is when
I'm patiently waiting.
I know. I can see though. I can see you're inching. You're sitting there. You're like waiting. You're like, come on, ask me the question. Ask me the question, Peter. Ask me. So I'm going to ask you the question because I always ask you the question. Tim, did you enjoy The Void?
Did I enjoy The Void?
Oh, look, I'm being coy.
It's Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. This is the good shit. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about, yeah, give me the good shit. I was really surprised because this is something I had known like nothing about until like late last week. Actually, like early this week, you're like, hey, let's do this movie. And
in fact, I do recall that when I said let's do The Void, I specifically remember you saying, I've not heard about this, so it's probably not going to be very good. I mean, if I've not heard of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the weird thing is, I mean, I don't know if you agree with this.
Probably not.
Well, at least me. I'm like so kind of tapped into. There's like a lot of stuff I follow other than like comic news or horror news. So I go to like some horror websites. I listen to some horror podcasts, and then a lot of my friends, enjoy horror a lot as well. So even if it's something I don't know much about, there's usually at least someone I know that is talking about it, or I'm at least saw like a little bit of a mention on a website. But this I was totally in the dark on, and I was very, very pleasantly surprised. And what's actually kind of weird too is I just watched this yesterday, and it was like immediately after watching it, I saw like 4 or 5 other people talking about it. Like, I don't know if it's just if everyone's kind of slow on this or if it's popping up somewhere that a lot of people are taking notice now. But I saw at least like 1 or 2 people tweeting about it, and 1 or 2 people on like my Facebook feed being like, oh, hey, like I just saw this movie and it rocks. And but yeah, I was super into it.
I think the obvious answer to that is that it just came out. And so
right.
That's why it's getting a lot more buzz now. I liked it as well. Not to leave you in suspense. But no, I liked it pretty early on. Like, I kind of just get a vibe from the opening scenes, like just that. All right, I'm getting the mood that this is going to portray, and then it went down its path, and I was like, okay, I'm digging what this is doing. I mean, it's not perfect, but I really liked it. I've got a couple of nitpicks, whatever, but really good. It's got elements of lots of other movies. It's got elements of The Thing. I would say there was a lot of Silent Hill influence in there.
See, what I thought, like the big comparison for me was I had a lot of Carpenter vibes in it, and I actually thought it was kind of a good mesh of The Thing and Prince of Darkness. It reminded me a lot of.
I can see that. I've got a lot of correlations to Silent Hill as well, and I'll talk about them more in spoilers.
I can see that, yeah.
And when I say Silent Hill, I mean the games, not the movies, just for anyone who's going to... Can I just say, before we even talk any more about this...
I'll allow it.
The illusion of power is a powerful thing to behold. I just can I just say I'm happy we finally had a win.
Oh yeah.
This year has been trying on my patience, because we had Split, which I really like Split, right? But Split was something that was more of a major release. It was more of a, I mean, it was low budget, don't get me wrong, I had like a $10 million budget, but it was like it was Blumhouse. It was like a mainstream out to theaters movie. And I feel like other than that, and Get Out is good as well, but Get Out was one that had a lot of buzz leading up to it. Like, people kept talking about Get Out, so I kind of knew about that. You know, I feel like last year we had so many of these VOD movies that were coming out that were impressing us. There was The Invitation. I liked Emily. I know you weren't as keen on it, but there was Hush that was pretty enjoyable. There was a lot of things coming out that spread throughout the year. It felt like we kept getting these hits, these things that were really good. This year, everything we've tried, everything that's been like, oh, this is a VOD movie I've not heard about yet. Every single one of them we've tried this year, and most of the cinema releases we've tried. Bye Bye Man, hello, have all been terrible, right? We have had a really rough time. Now, admittedly, it's been kind of gradually getting better over the last few weeks, because Prevenge and Devil's Candy both had a lot of good qualities to them, and we had some complaints, but certainly we enjoyed them a lot more than most of the stuff this year. It feels nice to come out of a movie, come into this show, and be like, no, I just really liked it.
Well, the one negative to that, though, is now every time we see some crappy new VOD release and we're like, should we do it? We're going to be like, well, who knows? Maybe it's the next Void. And you know it's not going to be. But
well, that's the thing. That's why I've insisted on doing them, is because we had so many good ones last year. It was like we were bound to hit a good one eventually.
Yeah.
It's just been
we were due.
Yeah, it's just been a really rough slate this first few months of the year. So like I said, last month's been a little bit better, but those first couple of months, outside of the obvious examples, were, I mean, what, Arbor Demon and It Watches, and what else do we do? I don't even know. What's so bad?
Some crap.
Yeah, some crap. I'm just happy that it's... So, I think the other thing that obviously the big influence in this that we've not mentioned, that I think people who are familiar with the movie will be screaming, saying, why haven't you said this yet? You've compared it to these things. It's very Lovecraftian.
Right.
It's this big idea of this cosmic horror. It feels like it's not just, like, it's horrific, but it's not just about, like, obvious, like, evil things. It feels like it's going for this cosmic feel of it. It's like it's coming from beyond. Like, there's more powerful places, and it's not necessarily your classic idea of good and evil and, you know, heaven and hell. It's, there's more to it.
And what's pretty cool about it is I think it's a nice split between there is like a lot of cosmic, like, cerebral stuff to it, but at the same time there is just really cool, like, monster and gore stuff. So it's not like I've tried to, like, I really like a lot of like Lovecraft's ideas about cosmic horror, but every time I try to read him, I find it really, like, impenetrable. Just his writing style. So I think
that's maybe just part of the whole, you know, it's you know, several hundred years old. Well, not several, but it's old. It's
early 1900s. But yeah, this actually, I don't know. Sometimes I think people try to capture that too much, where when you do like just like a straight adaptation, it's kind of hard. But if you do something like this, it's cool, where it's taking his ideas of, you know, weird cosmic beyond stuff that, you know, like most human minds can barely handle, but then also mixing it with a lot of interesting, cool stuff.
I like the feeling of dread that Lovecraftian stuff tends to inspire.
Yeah.
Like, there's this feeling of, like, oh, we're all screwed and there's no hope. Like, there's that feeling, but for a horror movie, that's actually really good. Like that. That's what I like in a horror movie. I like that feeling of doom. Obviously, you want some characters to survive. You want things to prevail, but there's that feeling like, oh, I don't know how anyone's going to get out of this. This is all just going bad, and it has that feeling through it. It has that feeling of dread. It has practical effects, some really out there great practical effects, which is good. I obviously, people who are used to this show know that I love a bottle movie. I love movies set in one location, and this is, you know, other than the intro that gets the sheriff to the mall, it's all set, not the mall. Sorry, I'm thinking of the most famous bottle movie ever, which is Dawn of the Dead. No, the hospital. They get to the hospital. And they have a reason. You know, there was a recent fire at the hospital, which is why it's like people have been transferred. So it's a very small, you know, there's like 2 nurses and a doctor, and a couple of patients. There's almost no one there. It's deserted, but they set up why that's why it's so just them, which gives it a great setting, limited cast. I feel like the characters, for the most part, you instantly get a sense of who they all are. Even if they're not super deep, you get a sense of they cast it smart enough and maybe wrote it smart enough that they all have just distinctly. There's a pregnant girl, there's an Asian nurse, there's a white nurse, there's the sort of the older doctor who's an old sort of guy. You know, they all have distinct. You know, there's no two people who you put them side by side and go, oh, you could get these two people confused. They all have a distinct look or a distinct characterization kind of thing.
No, I agree with what you're saying, but if I did have to have one, I guess, kind of big complaint about the movie is, I don't know, I don't think I really liked any of the characters that much. Like, not that any of them are bad. Like, the acting was good, and but just no one really stood out.
It's funny, like, you're sort of kind of hitting on what I have two main complaints about the movie. Yeah. If I'm hitting negatives, I have two main complaints. One, I think arguably the lead, who's the sheriff, Daniel, I don't know if it's just he's not a great actor, or if he's just written to be. He's kind of a little bitch, right? and it's fine that he's going through, because we get a little bit of backstory and like why he's in a place he is, because we find out quite quickly that him and the sort of the nurse, they're married but separated, and they've had a bit of a rough patch, and we get sort of a sense of what that is, and we'll talk about that a bit more in spoilers. But he feels like he's just kind of a wimp throughout the movie. Yeah. And I get that you want him to have went through stuff, and he's maybe not your traditional hero, and I think maybe this is in the casting more than anything else, is he just doesn't feel like he commands the lead. Like, I feel like he needs to be more likable.
Yeah, I think that's a problem. Like, he's not like an uber badass, which is fine. You don't have to be. Like,
yeah, I don't think this movie needed a badass.
Yeah, but then he's also not like there's nothing about him that's charming or that likable. Yeah, like he's just very kind of bland, and I don't know, maybe it's more realistic, you know, with the stuff he's dealing with. Like, yeah, probably a lot of people would not be you know, that I don't know, gung-ho, I guess, or whatever. And
see the point where you're saying you didn't really like the rest of them. I didn't dislike the rest of them either. I think my second complaint, beyond maybe him not being a great actor, is that I feel like the movie could have been 10 minutes longer, and I would have given all of that 10 minutes to the first act, because I think the characters they're all distinct enough. They keep it simple, and they're all distinct enough, but I feel like an extra 10 minutes of just actually building them up a little bit more, so that I got a good sense of who they all were, so that I think that's all that's missing, is a little bit of time to actually make us care about them.
I agree, because it's not that long of a movie. It's
90 minutes.
Yeah. So yeah, just a little bit more towards just making you care for him or something.
Yeah, I think all the first act, I think, I mean, going the same kind of thing. I think all the stuff that starts to go down almost starts to go down too quickly, and I'm like, this is weird. I feel like there should have been more time to breathe before shit really started to hit the fan at the start, and that's where I think the time should have went. If we're going to add some time, is give it to the characters at the start when they're just in the hospital. They're just sort of, you know, he's brought the guy who sort of like kickstarts the whole plot is in there, sure, but have him, he's knocked out for a good portion of the start of the movie. Let him be knocked out, and let us deal with the characters and how they all interact. There's a little bit of that, don't get me wrong, and I like what's there, but we could have used a bit more. I think just to set up who all the key players were and make us understand them all just a bit more would have been good. But that's kind of my only two complaints, though, is the lead actor who plays the sheriff isn't that great, and the characters could have used a bit more time at the start of the movie to just let us know who they are, and just because they're all distinct. Like I say, I like that they kept them all distinct, and it's a good sign of an ensemble. But like you say, they weren't super likable, and I think it's not because they weren't likable. It was just because we didn't get enough of them to really get a sense of
I think that's a very I think that's a very good point, because it's not like they were super bland or that they didn't have like characteristics, or like you did get a little bit of a feel for them, but not enough to ever really make you care that much. And you're right, maybe if it just had like just a little more build up, or just more scenes of them interacting or something, maybe it could have helped feel a little bit more towards them.
And the funny thing is, it's not even like it would really add much to the budget, because it's this would be the cheap stuff to shoot. This is just them in the hospital rooms talking to each other at the start. Like, just a little bit more of that, a little bit more of like have them, because there's like a patient like Kim, the who's played by Ellen Wong, who I was like, I know that name from somewhere. What's she from?
She was a nurse. I think you said patient accidentally.
What did I say?
I think you said patient, but she was a nurse.
Oh no! I said there's a patient, and then there's the nurse. The nurse is talking to him, and we get the set.
Oh, sorry.
And I was thinking, like, okay, who is this patient? Like, he's maybe not terribly important, but I think maybe there could be something that Kim and the other nurses have to do for him, and that's like that would be like a plot reason to like find out who they are through action. Like, why is he there? And maybe they have to do some more stuff. But maybe even before the sheriff arrives at the hospital, maybe it's have some of these characters interacting on a normal quiet night. You know, a quiet, dark, not so stormy night, but like, you know, just set them in a little bit with the characters. Maybe that would have given us a little bit more time for them. But I don't want to dwell on this too much, because it really is my only criticism, because everything else from that point on, once the shit gets going, the rest of the movie's just solid.
Yeah, it's a pretty small nitpick, because the story and the effects and everything else is so good that you're not really paying too much attention. Like it's not like throughout the movie you keep going like, oh well, I can't identify with this, because you get so caught up in the story.
I mean, I think the story would be a bit more effective if I cared just a bit more about the characters, but ultimately it doesn't affect the movie too much. But it is, I think it is worth mentioning. I think it's worth bearing in mind, and it would be the one main thing I'd change. Like, especially if they said, all right, you've got your two complaints, you've got your actor for the lead, and you've got the characters. If you told me I can only pick one of those things to fix, I would have given them more time to the characters. I can live with the sheriff being kind of bland. Give me the more time with the rest of them, because what we get is fine. Like I say, I mentioned Kim. Like, she's in training, and she's like showing like all the awful pictures in her medical book to the patient, and that's like fun little character beats. Like, just a little bit more of that at the start would have been cool. But let's not dwell on that. But sort of extended from that, just to sort of give one final example, is like there's a character that I thought, like, I won't say who it is because we're in spoiler free, but there's a character who gets killed off a lot quicker than I thought they would, because I thought they'd be kind of an antagonist to the core cast, and then it happened really quickly. I thought, oh, that's weird. I expected them to be a pain in the ass for everyone for at least half the movie, and they're already gone. That's really strange. But there you go. But no, rest of it super filled with dread, nightmarish. Violence is great. There's like some good blood splatter on top of the good practical monster gore effects. It's got some of that bottle movie charm where like they have to like go out the hospital to like get to the car to find something, but there's all these cultists like surrounding the building, and they're really creepy outfits with the triangle. You see this triangle all the time. This is the symbol of the cult. And you get this real feeling that things are apocalyptic. Everything feels like it's falling apart, and it's really and there's a lot of themes in there as well. There's like childbirth, and the loss of a child is a big theme. Like, it's almost ridiculous how many characters in some way are connected to the loss of a child at some point in this movie, because several of them are, bizarrely. But it's so that would be my spoiler free. Anything you want to say before we move into spoiler realm? Oh, the music's good. I'll just add on one more thing. Music's really good.
Yeah, I didn't even really think about that, but yeah, the music was good. I think we pretty much covered it. We can jump into spoilers. All
right. So, full spoilers on then from this point on. So like I say, there's this Marshall character who comes in after we get in, once stuff starts going down, and I thought, because he has this thing where he's disappointed in the sheriff, and he's like, oh, I knew your father, he'd be so disappointed in you, and he's like, oh, he's going to be like an antagonist for most of the movie, and he goes like almost first, not quite first, because obviously there's a scene before that with the other nurse who like cuts her face off, which, by the way, super nasty, but good nasty.
Yeah.
But you know, because I thought he was going to be this antagonist, and then he gets killed off at the first monster attack. Which, by the way, I think when you're comparing it to The Thing, it's when you see this practical monster that makes you think of The Thing.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. The first little monster interaction, or whatever you want to call it, is probably my favorite part of the movie. and it definitely been good up until then. There's been some weird stuff, some ominous stuff, and you see like I think you had gotten some glimpses of like the cult and stuff at that point. But then once we go full on monster, like that's when I was definitely hooked. Like, oh, wow, this is really interesting. And yeah, the design looks really cool. It's really gross, like nice, throwback to like practical like effects, like look kind of 80s ish.
Yeah.
Gruesome monster. But yeah, and then everything with I love the guy that's handcuffed to the hospital bed and just like freaking out trying to escape while the monster's right behind him, and that scene of when the door's closed and it's kind of hard to see, but you can just see like a little bit of its face pressing up against the glass was really cool.
Yeah. So the movie kind of like, we get our characters. There's a pregnant girl there with her grandfather. And obviously she starts going into labour because of course that's going to start happening when everything's going down. We have these two characters who are sort of hunting this guy that the sheriff's brought, because the movie opens with them killing some other people and they seem like villains, but obviously once the movie gets going, you get the sense that they're actually stopping like this, or at least trying to stop whatever's going on. Like they have already bared witness to this cult killing people and like changing people into killers, and they're hunting this guy down. And there's a lot of sort of tension between them and the other characters, because they're actually wanting to just kill the other characters. They think, oh, they're probably already like infected with all this satanic stuff, let's just kill them. And that at least a lot of attention. But so the movie actually goes down this interesting path for me, where so the doctor gets killed, like, and again it's a really good death moment, there's a lot of good stuff like that, but the movie gets really interesting for me is when and I'm enjoying it up until this point, because again it's a bottle movie, there's these violent outbursts, what's going on, there's the mystery, there's people having to go and get medical supplies and disappearing, and there's all this stuff going on. But it's basically when they realise they have to go in the basement where the fire was. And they're going down there, and it feels like they're like descending into hell. That's what it feels like. They're going down there, everything's burned and charred, and this is where the Silent Hill comparisons really started to feel like a big thing for me, is because it felt like in the Silent Hill video games when it would turn into Nightmare World, where you'd been in the hospital and then it would turn into the nightmare version of the hospital. That's what it felt like getting into this basement. And then when they go down there and they find like the room full of like all the failed experiments or whatever it is that the cult's been doing, because we find out, of course, the big twist, but it's revealed later on that the doctor, who we thought was dead, and well, he still is dead, but he's part of the cult and he's evil and satanic and all that, so he comes back. But he's actually been leading this cult. He's like the head of this cult, and he's got.
I was just saying, like, comparing it to video games and stuff, that also feels like a little Resident Evil-y, like when you're in a normal place, like a police station or something, and then there's like a ladder something that you go down that leads into this weird lab or. I can buy that comparison. Yeah. But again, going back to Silent Hill though, they find this room with all these like mutilated bodies that come to life and start attacking them, and well, one's got a knife, one's got an axe, and they're trying to. And I like as well that the movie really sets up its like key elements, like they have one shotgun, like because all the ammo runs out. There's that whole big scene where they have to go out to the car, and the cult leaders are all coming at them. And it's very very tense, very good scene. And I think this is where I really started getting like Prince of Darkness vibes. Yeah,
it reminds you of the homeless people in Prince of Darkness.
Yeah.
I can see it. But and that's one of those really good just traditional scenes where he's trying to unlock the gun, because it's in a cop car and the shotgun's locked up.
Yeah.
And he's trying to get the key, but it's like a ticking time bomb. He's like try to turn it, and the cult leaders are coming at him. But that's really cool stuff. But it's everything down in that basement though, especially because he's on the radio to Kim, who's up in the room with the pregnant lady and the grandfather, and she's like, and they say over the radio, right, we found another set of stairs going down another level, and she's like, what? There's no other level. What are you talking about? There's no stairs. And that's when it really feels like they're descending into hell, because it's one shot, it's when they find the stairs and they look down, and it just looks into darkness and like smoke, and it just like, oh, this just looks like hell. Like, you're literally descending into hell right now. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're really like, that they shouldn't go down there, but at the same time, it's like you got to go down there.
And it's when they go down there as well, they start having like visions of like their past life and all that. Like the guy with the gun like starts hallucinating and seeing. He's like wife and child. It seems like his family's been killed. The other guy who can't speak because his neck's been hurt, his family seems like they've been killed. Obviously the sheriff and his wife, like, they lost a kid, and that's why they've had a rough patch. We found out the doctor lost his daughter, and that's why he's even in this cult. That's why he started all this stuff.
Yeah.
And as they're down there and they're going through all this, like, at one point the doctor with his evil demonic voice starts talking to the sheriff, and it's this very, again, Lovecraftian, like, voice of dread kind of feel to it as he's wandering these dark hallways. And eventually we get to the showdown, and we see, like, they've got this big triangle again, and the doctor's taking off all of his skin at this point. He's like just a skinless person, but he's still functioning because he's evil. And it's worth mentioning as well, throughout the movie, we every so often we cut to, like, these cosmic shots of, like, space, and then, like, this, like, other world where it looks like a post-apocalyptic world where it's all just, like, kind of grey and dark and cloudy, and, like, it gives you this feeling that, like, this is the place, like, everything's coming from, this dark evil place. It's really cool.
And these kind of scenes too, with the guy without his skin, and kind of like the steps with the altar and the big black triangle, it also gave me a little bit of Hellraiser vibes.
Yeah, a little bit.
And I do want to point out too, like, we're comparing it to a lot of different stuff, and I think it's important to note that it doesn't feel like it ripped off this stuff in any way. Like, it never felt like, oh, this is just like that thing, but it's just had these, like, cool kind of similar feelings, and maybe slight
don't get me
homages.
Wrong. Don't get me wrong. I think you can see the influence. I think the guy, because it's two directors who made this. I think you can clearly see the influence that they've taken from a lot of different places. Yeah,
but it never feels like cheap or a rip-off or anything like that. It still feels like its own original entity, but just with, like, different. You can see the DNA of it from other stuff.
But so we have this big showdown, and the guy with the gun comes in and kind of saves the day and starts shooting at the monster. But it's around this time as well that we actually, sort of probably the biggest twist is that the pregnant girl turns out to also be part of the cult, and she slits her grandfather's throat, which is a really shocking moment. And she ends up coming down, and it's actually out of her, like, her baby, like, turns into a monster, and the monster grows from out from within her.
And she's carrying the doctor's child.
Yeah, and it's very think Alien Chestburster mixed with the Thing, and the monster sort of grows out of it, and, like, she's still part of the monster, and there's, like, all these legs and tentacles and all sorts of things, and that starts chasing, like, the guy who can't speak, like, through all the halls and stuff. Like, he's running away, and the other guy, the older guy, he sets himself on fire. He like, douses himself when he realizes he can't do anything else, and he's getting, like, attacked by this monster. He just, like, pours gasoline and oil or whatever it is all over him and himself, and he's like, right, light me.
Yeah.
Do it.
So the other guy has, like, a flare, and he wants to.
That's the other thing. Like, when they're in all these dark areas, like, they have these flares that every so often the light, and it makes everything red. Like, the lighting's all red, and it gives it this hellish kind of demonic feel to it. It's like, if it's not darkness, then it looks like this, and neither one is very appealing. but it's great though. I was super into all that stuff. I was into the stuff before that as well, but once they went down into that basement, everything just felt like it was, like, a descent into madness. I have no idea. Like, I didn't think anyone was going to get out of it. And I actually think it's a big compliment to the movie that, like, there's two survivors, and I don't think you might have guessed who those survivors were going to be.
Oh, no. Yeah. I was pretty... Yeah, I was gearing up for... Like, with everything that's going on, I had a feeling that this is going to be one of those, like, depressing ending movies where, you know, everything just ends up really bleak. And
to be fair, I did guess one of the survivors, because I thought there was something poetic about the guy who can't speak being the one who survives.
Yeah.
So I expected him to survive, but I was like, oh wait, Kim's still alive, isn't she? Because we saw her run from the cult, mate. After the grandpa gets his throat slit, she runs away and she goes and hides. And I was like, oh wait, she's still alive. And he runs into her, and, like, they're sort of left on their own. Actually, compared to Prince of Darkness, I think there's a good comparison to maybe that with the ending, the showdown.
Yeah.
Because the not to go into spoilers for that, but the way this movie, like, ends the final conflict is the sheriff, like, he realizes that, you know, that the doctor in his skinless form is, like, bringing stuff through the void. Like, that's the thing. He's bringing it from this other dimension. This cosmic evil is coming through this big triangle. So he runs up and, like, tackles him into the triangle. So he goes through with him. and that closes the gateway. And because of that, it's actually a really cool effect. Is with the silent guys running from the monster, the walls are all closing in because this part of the hospital's not meant to be here.
Yeah.
And it all starts closing in because the gateway stopped. Like the idea that this entire section is all part of this hellish nightmare that connects to this, well, the void. That's why the movie's called that. Yeah. But no, it's super exciting stuff. But we get one final scene at the end after everything's like it sort of went down. We see our survivors. It's morning finally. The night of hell has come to an end. And the sheriff and his wife, who's already in there because she was taken by the doctor. And like weirdly like impregnated with a monster and all sorts of crazy shenanigans. But the sheriff and the wife are in this place, and we see them standing in here, and there's like this hellish world. It looks barren, it looks desolate, and this giant like pyramid in the sky, like the triangle that's been their symbol, this monolith of like evil power or whatever it is just like in the sky, and it's kind of the big ending. But no, I was super into this. It was full of dread. It's the best word I can describe. It's this idea that they're just like powerless against this monolithic, like monstrous, like evil.
Yeah, I think that's what the best part of Lovecraft stuff is. It makes you feel small. It makes you feel like there's nothing that you can do, that you're just insignificant to these other beings. And I thought this movie illustrated that perfectly. Especially like once they start descending into the basement and things really start ramping up, you start to feel like, ooh, I don't know again how this is gonna end. I don't know if these people are really equipped to be dealing with this.
There's also something really perverse about it being the doctor who's doing all this. Like he's the one who's initiated it all. Because he's supposed to be there to help you. He's like you think of a doctor as someone who's ultimately there to heal and there to aid you, and the idea that he is the one causing all this evil and is being selfish and is went off the deep end because he lost his daughter. And obviously, child loss is a big theme of the movie because, like we say, several characters have lost children throughout.
And especially when you first see the doctor, he's like an old, looks frail kind of man. When you first see him in the beginning, but then once they go into the basement, then you start hearing his voice. He sounds a lot creepier. And then once you see him without his skin, he actually looks a lot more muscular and intimidating. Is a nice switch. I wouldn't have early on. I wouldn't have guessed that he was going to be the big bad.
Yeah. It's just that power of darkness, isn't it? You get power from evil spirits.
Yeah.
All that jazz.
Now, I don't know if I missed something about this. Maybe you have some insight, but was there a specific reason why they were cutting off their faces? I don't know if...
I don't have a straight answer for you. I think I don't think they explained it at certainly at any point, like why. Yeah.
I was wondering if I missed it or if I had forgotten.
I took that as like it was them showing their true form.
Okay.
Like like their faces were masks and like where they're going or what the power they want to tap into. It's just I didn't take it as like a practical thing.
Yeah. Okay. I was just curious. Yeah, because I know, like sometimes, even though it was a really entertaining movie, there was maybe one or two parts where my mind might have wandered a little bit, and then I was wondering, like, did I miss something or? I don't know. I kind of love this movie. As much as I had a couple of complaints, which I think are legitimate complaints and things that do kind of affect the movie, and maybe why it stops it from being like classic tier kind of status, but this is certainly one of the best surprises this year so far. Yeah, so I agree 100%.
So, no, if you like practical effects, if you like Lovecraftian style horror, if you like Prince of Darkness and The Thing, I would highly recommend checking out The Void. It's really, really good stuff. But no, super violent as well. Like the blood splatter, like all that stuff. It's great.
Yeah.
And
this is definitely something where now these two directors, I don't know, did it say if they wrote it as well, or
did they write it as well? I can tell you, they did indeed.
Okay, yeah. So these are definitely people who are going to be on my radar now. Like, I'm assuming this is probably the first thing they did, or at least the first thing they did of note.
They did one more movie before this. For a while ago, they actually at least one of them. When I looked at one of them, they've done a lot of like effects and like art and production and stuff for other movies. Like if you see so it's Jeremy Gillespie and Stephen Kostanski. Jeremy Gillespie, for example, when you click on his IMDb page, it's, you know how it always puts like what they're known for the most, like in terms of the role at the top. So okay, so one actor might have directed a movie, but he's known for being an actor, so it'll be always acting stuff first. The first thing that comes up for him is art department. He's done art department for a bunch of other stuff. He's been doing The Expanse, which is on. He's working on.
We gotta watch it.
He's the assistant art director for It, that's coming up. He was assistant art director for Suicide Squad. So these guys work on.
Can't all be winners.
Well, yeah, but that's not really his fault if the movie sucks when he's just the art director.
I guess the art was good. So.
But the point is that these guys are, at least this one is working on like big budget movies as a smaller cog in the wheel, but they got to go away and do their own low budget movie, and I think it was. I think maybe the characters lacking a little bit of time is maybe a sign of them being like sort of effects guys first and caring about the monster stuff more than anything else. But it holds up pretty well regardless of that, which is kind of cool. So, well,
yeah, I mean, they're definitely people who I want to, whatever the next project is, I'll be pretty interested in that.
Yeah. Hopefully they work on something soon. So. Now, let's get to ratings then. So, what are you thinking? What are you thinking, Timbo?
I was going a little bit back and forth as I usually do, but I think I'm just gonna land on a solid 8. Like we said, there are a few nitpicks, but I mean, this is something that I do want to watch again. And like, I don't need to see it right away. Like I'm not gonna watch it tomorrow, but I could definitely see myself wanting to watch this again in the future. And it might be one of those things where on a second or third viewing, it might even bump it up a little bit more for me. But as of right now, though, I'm just landing on an 8.
Do you know, I was thinking it throughout most of the movie, and then when the doctor stepped out skinless, actually no, maybe even it was actually maybe in the room where all the Silent Hill-esque like mutilated corpses came to life. I was like, no, 8.5.
Yeah.
Like it bumped it up. Like it just because I thought I knew what the movie was at that point, and it still was what I thought it was, but it just got cooler. Like it's don't get me wrong. The reason why I love this movie are different to maybe why I love some other movies. Like this is a movie where I love the effects, I love the monsters, I love the overall feeling of dread and the plot. Because typically I do value characters above a lot of other things, but and this is a case where characters maybe aren't the best thing in the world, but the rest of it's so good that I'm going with an 8.5. So,
and I like that video game comparison because it does feel like it it excels like a like a video game. Like once they kind of start descending downstairs, that almost feels like, all right, this is the last level now, and like here's like the last boss. And it's, and
to compare it to survival horror video games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil, the idea that they only have one gun and there's a limited amount of ammo, like the idea that they're like they don't have an infinite amount of supplies, like there's a lot of correlations there.
I also got a little bit, I haven't played as much of it as you, who I think actually beat the whole game, but it reminded me of a little bit of the Evil Within as well.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like we're naming a lot of survival horror games. Maybe most survival horror games are kind of similar to an extent that it's easy to compare them to all of them. But I don't know. Yeah, I got a lot of feelings like that.
Yeah, I think that just the final note I'll say about compare it to Silent Hill, the fact that it all seems to be about child loss and about the characters like suffering these traumatic events is very Silent Hill. Like the characters in Silent Hill, when the reason why the characters are in Silent Hill is because they've went through something traumatic. So even that kind of links up with that. So that's pretty cool. So it's a better Silent Hill movie than any of the Silent Hill movies. So I'll say that.
Definitely.
It just all it's missing is the fog and maybe some like a pyramid head or something. It's just missing that. But there you go. That's The Void. We really liked it, so check it out if you want a good bottle movie that ties into cosmic horror and is full of dread and practical effects. That is my recommendation. So thank you very much for watching. Let us know what you think of the movie. If you've seen it, in the comments below, like and subscribe and all that stuff. Helps us out a lot if you do. Get us on Twitter at mild_fuzz for channel updates. Individual Twitters, I'm at Wibble89. Tim's at Tim Vergulish. If you want to hear us ramble on there. But that's us, guys. So thank you very much for watching. Keep watching scary movies, and we'll see you next time.